Hello. Welcome to the Cathedral of St. John the Evangelist here in beautiful Spokane, Washington. I am John Bodinger. I am the organist here. Very lucky I am to be that organist. Anyway, we're going to do a presentation today about the mighty pipe organ here at St. John's. But before I do, I'd like to begin today's lecture program with two drastically contrasting thoughts about the organ as an instrument by two of history's greatest composers. Mozart once famously praised the organ, writing, "In my eyes and ears, it is the king of instruments." In direct contrast to that is commentary by Igor Stravinsky, and I paraphrase, "The organ is a horrible monster that never breathes." Let me show you what I mean by that. So if I were to play a little bit of the Rite of Spring, for example, and then I'm going to take a pencil and pop it in there where my finger was. Now, if I were to leave right now and come back in 24 hours, that would still be sounding. So that's what Stravinsky means by that horrible monster that never breathes. Unless there's a power failure, of course, but there it is. How does an organ work? Simply stated, the pipe organ is a big box of whistles. Each pipe sits on top of a hollow wind chest that is filled with compressed air provided by a bellows or blower. Each stop at the organ console represents a set of pipes or rank of a particular tone color with a different pipe for every note on the keyboard. Pulling the stop activates a slider under that specific set of pipes on the wind chest, making them available as a sound source. The wind chest also contains a series of valves or pallets connected to the keyboard by a mechanical linkage. These pallets govern the flow of air to each pipe, and even though a stop may be on, no pipes will sound until a key is depressed and its respective pallet opens. This allows the compressed air to pass up through the pipe for that note, creating sound. Pipes are made from various materials: lead, copper, wood, even bamboo. Some are round and some are square, but they all come in two basic types: flue pipes and reed pipes. A flue pipe is designed like a whistle or a recorder. A long tube with a narrow opening at one end and a hole with a special shape that causes the air going through the pipe to vibrate. The longer the pipe is, the longer the wavelength is, and the lower the pitch is. At this point, I'm going to play a composition for you by Louis Vierne called Meditation, which will feature the foundations of the organ, or the flues of the organ, at 8-foot pitch. With pipes of the same diameter, if you have an 8-foot pipe tuned to C, a 4-foot pipe will also be a C, but 1 octave higher. And a 2-foot pipe will be an octave higher than that. All of the notes between those octaves are in-between lengths with a precise mathematical ratio that determines the pitch or note of each pipe. For more detailed information about this, I would recommend that you Google natural harmonic series or overtone series, and you'll get much more scientific detail about what I'm talking about. Reed pipes work very much like a woodwind instrument, a clarinet, for example, or a saxophone. The sound of these pipes is determined by the vibration of a metal tongue or reed, and the length of the pipe determines the pitch. They make a very different kind of sound, like this. So the next composition on the program will be a piece by John Stanley. This is from a voluntary, and it will feature the big solo trumpet in the back of the cathedral, and it will be in dialogue with the 8-4-2 principles of the Great Division. And I'll talk more about the divisions of the organ later. So music of John Stanley. And now a brief history about the pipe organ in general. Eusebius of Alexandria, a Greek engineer, is credited with building the first organ over 2,300 years ago. It was called the hydraulis. It used water pressure to blow air through the pipes. Its pipes stood on top of a wind chest that was connected to a conical wind reservoir. The reservoir was supplied with air by 1 or 2 pumps. For the pipes to sound evenly, the wind chest needed steady air pressure. The open bottom of the cone was set in a tall outer container, half filled with water. When air pressure in the cone was low, the water level rose inside it, compressing the air and restoring the former air pressure. The player operated keys, or, on some instruments, sliders that let air into the pipes. Its sound was loud and penetrating. This instrument was introduced to Rome about 200 years later. The instrument spread throughout the Mediterranean and was played at banquets, games, and circuses, all outdoor events, which meant that it had to be loud. So there was no choice, right? Around 700 AD or so, water pressure was replaced by a bellows, and the hydraulis was replaced by the organ. The organ began making its way into churches around the year 900. By the 1400s, organs were in churches and cathedrals all over Europe. Until the mid-15th century, organs had no stop controls. Around 1450, controls were designed that allowed the ranks to be played individually. These devices were the forerunners of modern stop actions. By the 1700s, organs began to be built in America. One of the first was completed in 1759 in the Old North Church in Boston, where Paul Revere was the sexton. During the 1800s, steamed power organs, or calliopes, appeared. These instruments could travel, which is why we associate the sound of the calliope with carnivals and circuses. In the early 20th century, pipe organs with special sound effects like drums, cymbals, and even car horns were installed in movie theaters to accompany films during the silent era. When talking pictures appeared in the 1930s, most movie theaters got rid of their pipe organs. And now, a history of the organs at St. John's Cathedral. The information that I'm going to share with you today was extracted from a wonderful book here in the cathedral's archives entitled Music in the Cathedral of St. John the Evangelist, which was compiled by Rosalie Aspey. In 1889, when All Saints Church was built, the people raised $6,000 for a pipe organ of about 1,000 pipes. $6,000 around that time is roughly equivalent to the purchasing power today of about $153,000. The organ was installed in 1890. This was the organ that was in All Saints Church, which became All Saints Cathedral in 1892. This organ was used for about 20 years. The Perrine memorial organ was acquired, and when St. John's was built, the Perrine organ was moved there along with the pews and other furnishings. The period from 1929 to 1939 was a period of readjustment for the people of the new cathedral. During this time, the Perrine memorial organ, which had been brought to St. John's from All Saints, began to misbehave, usually at the most embarrassing moments. The Paulson family procured the very fine organ that had been in the Clemmer Theater, which is now known as the Bing Crosby Theater. You should all check out the following website, bingcrosbytheater.com. You'll find a wonderful history of the Clemmer Theater there and some good detailed information about the organ. According to the website, the owner of the building was August Paulson. He was a Swedish immigrant who struck it rich in Idaho's silver mines. Paulson invested much of his wealth in Spokane buildings, including the Clemmer Theater. The pipe organ, an integral part of pre-talkie movie theaters, was installed by the W. Kimball Company of Chicago. It was a 4-manual instrument, and I quote, "the only one of its kind in a moving picture theater in the Pacific Northwest," unquote, according to the Spokesman Review article. The article continues by saying the following: with hundreds of individual tones issuing from 3,000 pipes, filling a space that measured 18 by 40 feet, the organ could produce a sound as large as a 40-piece orchestra. The Paulson family gave this organ to St. John's as the Paulson Memorial Organ. A number of years later, this organ had to be removed because the building of the next unit of the cathedral involved where we are currently, the choir section. Mr. Arthur Biggs served as organist and choirmaster from 1938 until 1954. Once the Paulson organ had been removed, Mr. Biggs had an electronic organ brought in. This organ was used until the gift by the Jewett family of the magnificent George Frederick Jewett Memorial Organ around 1959 to 1960. On Wednesday evening, March 23rd, 1960, the program for the Lenten meeting was an invitation to all adults to go up into the cathedral and get acquainted with the new Aeolian Skinner organ. Mr. Lawrence Scherns and Mr. Robert Struhl, who were in charge of the organ's installation, had reached the tuning stage after months of work on the installation. These two men gave a lecture, and the organist choirmaster at that time, Mr. Myron McTavish, illustrated at the organ. The talks were most interesting and instructive. Manuals, stops, divisions, locations, and pipes were explained and illustrated when possible. Listen to this review about this lecture and demonstration, which is found in Aspie's compilation. At the conclusion of the program, we heard the most glorious music ever heard on earth. It started softly, and peaceful melody filled the church and the souls of those listening. Gradually it grew as other parts and divisions of the organ joined in the great chorus until it seemed to reach up beyond the edifice and into the heavens above. It seemed as though it was sending thanks and praise to the Lord with great hallelujahs. Some listeners were weeping, and we choristers were so filled with the magnificent beauty of the music that we were lifted up out of ourselves, joining in our hearts and minds with the thanks and praise, and rededicating ourselves to our parts in the ministry of music at the cathedral. It's quite a glowing review, I would say. Now, let's take a closer look at the organ console here at St. John's. This is not the original console. In the year 2000, the console underwent major renovations and received new manuals, new draw knobs, a digital combination action, and digital control for all of the pipework. The renovation was performed by Marceau and Associates, pipe organ builders of Portland, Oregon. And if you look closely, you can see that little plate up here that says Console Modernization Marceau and Associates. While I'm here, I should also demonstrate this, which is really cool. You probably saw the Carillon feature back in last year. As the organist here, I actually have the ability to ring a couple of the bells right here from the organ console. This is the Matins bell. And I'm also allowed to ring the St. John's, it's the biggest bell of the Carillon, referred to as Big John. That is one big honking bell, I can tell you that. When you push that button, what, it was like 5 seconds or something before it actually sounded? Unbelievable. So, when we're talking about the pipe organ, oftentimes what we are really talking about is pipe organs, plural. Within one organ, you have many smaller organs. So, for example, you see these natural divisions here. We have, this is the pedal organ. Right here, this is the swell organ. Over here, we have the great organ. And here, the choir organ. And then there are 6 stops down here that we refer to as the gallery organ. Not only is it multiple organs, but it's also multinational. And I'll show you what I mean by that. The swell division here is referred to by using the French term, récit. The great division has a German term to describe it. It's referred to as the Hauptwerk. So, multinational, multi-organs. It's quite a remarkable thing. So, where I am physically, I am directly below the north chamber, which is where the pedal and the choir stops are housed. So as you can see, there is a keyboard down here that I play with my feet. So I would say 90% of the time, 90 to 95% of the time, this pedal board is used to provide the bass line for hymns, anthem accompaniments, organ literature, etc., etc. I'll demonstrate that with this wonderful piece by Dietrich Buxtehude called Prelude, Fugue, and Chaconne, which features an amazing pedal solo at the very beginning. On the opposite side, on the south chamber there, is where the great and swell divisions are. We have some great footage of that, which I can't wait to show you. So let me demonstrate for you now the highest and the lowest notes of this instrument. I'm hoping that you'll be able to hear this. It's more of a rumbling feeling than anything else, but it's very quiet. So I'm hoping that this will actually come through. Let's see if it does. So I was playing the lowest note on the organ there. Remember I was talking about 8s, 4s, and 2s earlier? So if you go in the opposite direction, so 8 times 2 is 16. So we get a 16-foot pitch here, which would be the same pitch as the low C on a typical grand piano, not a Bosendorfer, but a standard Steinway, for example. Now, imagine an octave below that. 16 times 2 is 32. So now the air travels 32 feet to get this rumbly effect. Now, some of the higher pipes on this instrument, or over here in the choir division. So we're going to be entering dog whistle territory here. So I'm going to start. This is middle C, the key middle C, although it's sounding as a G. That's a whole other lecture. I'm not going to get into that now, but let's just play from here. So you can only build organ pipes so small. So as I went up the scale, you noticed probably that the pipe sounds would circle back and then incline again or ascend again. So anyway, so I was talking about the divisions of the organ. So for each of the divisions of the organ, there is a separate keyboard associated with it. So when I sit here at the bench and I want to demonstrate the pedal division, I can do so by pulling some stops out here. And in fact, I'll just play a brief solo for you here. I'm going to play more of that piece later on during this presentation. So that's the pedal. The beauty of that, I would say like 90% of the time, when you are using the pedals of the organ, the pedals are providing the bass part to the hymns or to the choral anthem or to the organ music that you happen to be playing. But if you have the correct stops set up, you can actually play a melody line in the pedal. I'm going to play just a brief excerpt of a piece by Jean Langlais called Prelude to the Kyrie. So the swell or the récit is played from the top here. The great keyboard or the great division is played on the middle keyboard. And then the choir is here on the bottom. So all of those sounds are coming from above me here. Now, That's all great. Oh, I forgot to mention the gallery. This is an interesting situation. I'm going to pull out the big trumpet stop on the gallery, and let's see. Oh shoot, it's not sounding anywhere. It's not. This is a real bummer, right? This is the one division of the organ that does not have a keyboard specifically for it. So you have to tell the organ from which keyboard you want it to play. So in this case, so this is what we refer to as a floating division because it does not have a keyboard associated with it. So in this case, I'm going to couple the big trumpet from the gallery, and I'm going to play the gallery trumpet on the choir keyboard. So you see how it says gallery to choir? That is referred to as a coupler. So if I activate that, now I can play the solo trumpet on the choir. Etc., etc. Or I could have it play on the grate instead. Now, I got to show you this other really cool thing. So, coupling. You can essentially couple any keyboard to the grate. So, in other words, I can take my swell stops, my choir stops, I got to pull some of these out by hand, and then the grate stops are here. So, I could, if I wanted to, create sort of a three-part dialogue, if you will. So those are all dialoguing together, but at the same time, you could also combine all of those keyboards together. So I'm going to hit Réci to Hauptwehr, or swell to grate. And I'm also going to hit choir to Hauptwerk, so choir to grate. So now all three of these keyboards are sounding together. And then, of course, you could also have the keyboard divisions coupling down to the pedal. So in other words, if I wanted to do, oh, we were talking about that melody earlier. So if I wanted to play, for example, some lovely chords in the hands and then play a melody in the feet, I can do so. I'm going to pull out this 4-foot octave here, and I want that stop to be played on the pedal. So I've drawn my stop. I'm now going to put on grate to pedal, and now I'm playing it in the feet. So in other words, I can play a melody here, and when you heard the prelude to the Kyrie, that's how I did that, was to play the melody there. Now, there's one other really cool thing I need to show you, and that is in regards to all of these buttons underneath the keyboard here. And there are also a bunch of black buttons above the pedal board, which are combination pistons. In other words, I can preset my sounds. For example, let me just do this. Yeah, I'm going to push pedal 1, pedal 2, pedal 3. So there's nothing set on pedal 1, but there's something set on pedal 2. So when I push this button here, Brendan, I'll have you look over here, and you can see that those stops came out. Now I'm going to push pedal 3. Another stop comes out. Pedal 4. More stops come out. 5. Nothing happens there. But then if I hit 10, watch what happens over here, Brendan. See how all those came out? I'm going to push pedal 1. That cancels everything. Oh, except for that misbehaving stop. There we go. And now I'm going to push 10 again. And they all come out again. So you have these combination pistons for each of the divisions of the organ. And then you also have something called a general piston, which when you push these it activates stops from all of the divisions at the same time. So in other words, here's general 1. It's fairly quiet. General 2, I have a few more stops that are added. General 3, General 4, General 5, General 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. This is probably the loudest sound that I would use for a typical church service. And then I have a couple of pistons set up just for general sounds, 11 and 12. But you can see how quickly those stops change, the combinations change, which makes it really convenient. For example, if I'm playing a big piece, etc., etc., I could quickly make that registrational change, and then as soon as I'm done with that, I can go back to my big sound again. Whoops. Etc., etc. So anyway, that's a really cool thing. So we have 8 great divisional pistons, 8 choir, 8 swell. We have 12 general pistons. Now let me show you one other really cool feature about this. So you see above the pedal board here, there are these 3 pedals here. They look like footrests or something, but in fact, they do affect the volume of 2 of the divisions. So the one on the left side there is the expression pedal for the choir division. So if I wanted to, I could set up some stops here. Just right now, I'm just going to do an 8-4-2 and play a chord, and then I can close the box to get the sound to be softer. And then I can open it up again to make it louder. So there is some dynamic variation, which is an awesome thing to have, particularly when you are accompanying a choir for an offertory anthem, for example. So we have it for the choir division. The one in the middle is for the swell division. And let me demonstrate that for you. So and then there's a third pedal on the right. This is one I very rarely use, but if you are playing a piece that requires a huge crescendo out of nowhere, then we activate what is called the crescendo pedal. So I could be playing quite softly, Here's another way in which this could be demonstrated. I'm just going to play a C major chord here. And now I'm going to open up the expression pedal here, the crescendo pedal, and you'll see what happens, or hear what happens. Let's say you have a visiting organist coming to play a recital, and you don't want to have to erase all of your presets, right? This organ, luckily, has different memory levels. So in other words, if you look here, Brendan, you see that red light there that says 095? That is memory level 095. And there's a green little thing here that says locked. So that locks the combinations into position so that no one can come in and mess with them. So you see this key here? I can lock or unlock the combination action by just turning the key slightly to the right. And it'll either be locked or unlocked. And usually I try to have that key hidden somewhere so that no one can come in and mess with my combination sound. So anyway, we have, luckily, a total of 128 levels of memory, which is awesome. So instead of just 12 general pistons, you have 1,536 general pistons. So you can have any number of organists coming in here to play. And this actually happens usually around the time of Music Fest. We have many organists that come in, and they each are assigned their own memory level or levels, depending on how complex their music is and how many registrational changes they have to make. So that's a very nice thing to have, that many levels of memory. So anyway, and then the other thing to know is that we have, when we're not in the COVID era, at least, we have the organ tuned twice per year, usually in early December prior to the big Christmas, like Advent and Christmas season. And then we also try to have the organ tuned sometime during Lent so that it's as nicely in tune for Easter Sunday. Thank you so much for joining us today. I wanted to, first of all, thank Brendan Beal, who was brave enough to get into the lift and go up into the south organ chamber to take some footage of the great and the swell divisions up there. Thank you for putting your life at risk for this project, Brendan. I also would like to thank our Director of Music, Andrea Olson, for her support in this project. And I also wanted to supply you with some resources, some of which I used today. On YouTube, you will find a video called The King of Instruments: History, Science, and Music of the Pipe Organ. I highly recommend that you look at that video. It's awesome. There's also a website. It's pipedreams.publicradio.org, How a Pipe Organ Works. I also wanted you to take a look at bingcrosbytheater.com, which contains a history of the Clemmer Theater and about the organ that was in the Clemmer Theater. Thank you again for joining us. We're going to conclude this presentation with a performance of Fugue in E-flat major by Johann Sebastian Bach, perhaps one of his better known fugues, otherwise known as the St. Anne Fugue. It's often referred to as the St. Anne Fugue because it's very similar to the hymn tune St. Anne. O God, our help in ages past. So, thank you again, and here goes.